Howdy, howdy, and welcome back to another episode of the Pup and Away podcast. My name is Stephanie. I am your unofficial pro dog mom, but officially a certified dog trainer, canine behaviorist, and canine nutritionist, and the very proud owner of Pup and Away, where we specialize in pet care with a behavioral edge that is dog training, doggy daycare, structured socialization play, and doggy boarding in San Antonio, Texas. So today, I don't really know the point of today's podcast episode is. I'm afraid that it's going to turn a little bit more into a rant than actual information for you to take away. But my heart has just been really heavy with some recent stories and experiences and conversations that I've had with other trainers, that I've seen and heard of other trainers just in the city of San Antonio. And while I hope that there's a lot of people who listen to the podcast who are also not from San Antonio, I know that this is not something that is only happening in San Antonio. A very small trigger warning, we do talk about some abuse and neglect. I do not go into detail into anything on the podcast episode, but if you do think that that is something that can possibly be triggering for you, I do recommend skipping this episode. But it's also really important to know what kind of stuff is happening around us. So if you can stick around, I really hope that you do. So let's talk about the industry of dog training. First of all, there are indeed certifications, right? At the beginning of every episode, I tell you guys that I am a certified dog trainer, I am a certified canine behaviorist, and I am actually dual certified canine nutritionist. And the reason why that's dual certified is because those certifications came from two different organizations. My dog trainer certification and my behavior certification. They're two different certifications, but I don't have multiple organizations certifying me in those things. Though I do have to recertify every, I think, 3 years, keep up with continued education and different things like that. So even though there are certifications, this industry is not regulated anywhere, not even just in San Antonio, not just in Texas, but in the United States in general. I don't even know if it possibly has any better regulations than anywhere else, any other countries. So there are professional organizations that put on like annual conferences and things like that. But there are many different avenues and certifications for someone to obtain. But at the end of the day, anyone can call themselves a dog trainer. And to be honest, I called myself a dog trainer before I was officially certified because, you do have to gain experience in some sort of way. So first, let's talk about the different avenues that one can become a certified dog trainer. There are in-person schools. The one that I'm most familiar with is one called the Star Mark Academy, where you actually go and live in these little trailers, and they partner, I believe, with a couple of different rescue organizations or the city shelter. You get paired with a dog, and that's pretty much your dog that you're going to train for your entire time that you're there. So students can learn basic and advanced obedience. They can learn basic and advanced behavioral problem solutions, agility, advanced clicker training, kennel management, police canine and protection, scent discrimination, search and rescue, and assistance dogs for the handicapped, all in under just 12 weeks. That is a lot to learn in just 12 weeks. While it is a very in-depth program because that's pretty much all you're doing for those 12 hours is learning and working with your dog, I would say that a lot of those things that I just mentioned probably need a little bit more than just 12 weeks for you to be well certified in this. But that's just me. One of my best friends and fellow dog trainers actually graduated from the Star Mark Academy, and she's absolutely fantastic. She's a great person. She's a great dog trainer. Trust her wholly. If there's ever a client that I'm working with that I just need a little bit of outside perspective, she's the one that I go to. But in my opinion, 12 weeks, that's like their longer program. Their 12 weeks to learn all of that just simply isn't enough. But hey, at least it's a start. And there are I'm sure a couple of other in-person schools that you can go to. That's just the one that I'm most familiar with. There are also probably more online schools, one being the Karen Pryor Academy and the other one being the Animal Behavior College. I don't know much about the Karen Pryor Academy because I've never taken any of those courses. However, Karen Pryor is a very big, well-known trainer who actually just recently passed away. And she's known for her clicker training. Clicker training has been something that has been around much longer than Karen Pryor herself, but she was the person who kind of put it on the map for dog training. I know a lot of really well-respected, well-known dog trainers in the industry work and advocate and work within this program as whether they're mentors or instructors or anything like that. They're on the board. So this is a very great avenue for you to go through. Again, I know a couple of dog trainers who I do like and I do respect who have graduated from the Karen Pryor Academy. So I definitely would say that this is a good way to go if you are considering yourself going or you're considering a dog trainer who is Karen Pryor certified. There is another one that I'm familiar with, and that is the Animal Behavior College. Again, that's an online course, and both the Karen Pryor and Animal Behavior does pair the students up with a mentor. And this is why I'm familiar with Animal Behavior College, is because I used to mentor for Animal Behavior College, which was very interesting because I don't think they really knew much about me when they asked me. I think my website's pretty nice and all, but I don't think it was enough for a company like this to entrust their students with. And there was no interview process. They reached out to me and they said, hey, would you be interested? Your information on your website looks like you align with our goals. Okay, sure. I wasn't told much about their curriculum or how their curriculum runs, but I was given an outline to what I'm supposed to do as a mentor. And the mentorship is not the very last thing, but is the last learning part for these students. So they go through their online coursework, then they go through the mentorship program, and then they take a final test. And they are supposed to get a passing grade from me, the mentor. But I found that even though I was one of the very last things, they've gone through all their coursework, so one of the very last things that these students are supposed to be going through, these students didn't know a lot. They didn't know much at all. And again, that could just be a difference in the curriculum that they were going over and what I know. But some of them even struggled with, basics of potty training or jumping up and different things like that. So it was, I think, still better than nothing. But there's still a lot of missing holes there. My certification that I got is through the Certification Council of Professional Dog Trainers. And it's just kind of a glorified test. I do have to log in over 300 hours or at least 300 hours of on-hands training experience that does have to be signed off by someone, whether it's the pet parent who I'm working with or it's the organization that I'm working with. For me, I was working at a facility, so I got a lot of hours through that. So they do have to have a log of 300 hours, and you do also have to have letters of recommendations from other trainers who are CPDT certified. So it is a little bit more than just a test, but at the end of the day, it really kind of is just a test, right? Because there is no core skill that I go through. There's no robust training that we go through, and it kind of leaves the door open for lots of different methods and techniques to be used, which is kind of cool, right? Because even as I'm training, I just started using a new technique for reactivity not too long ago. So it does, leave the door open for lots of new stuff to come in. And they do recommend certain books to read and different things like that. And there is a whole code of ethics that we agree to. But at the end of the day, it kind of is just a test. Of course, one that I do have to keep up with regular continued education hours and keep up with, or else it'll go null and void, and then I have to do the whole process all over again. But I would say this probably is one of the most well-known certification programs. So the Certification Council of Professional Dog Trainers, CPDT. In my experience, that one and the Karen Pryor Academy are probably the two most well sought out certification programs to consider. So what I'm getting at is, while I do think that regulation and certification is important and needs more work, not one of these avenues is perfect and still leaves a little bit of room for inadequacy. So let's talk about the types of trainers that you might encounter. But first, we have to have a quick conversation about the quadrants of learning. So to make things easy, you can kind of break things up into two halves. You have positive and negative, and then you have reinforcement and punishment. So positive and negative doesn't mean good or bad, right? It's not like, oh, that was a positive thing to do, therefore it's good. No, positive means that you're adding something, giving something into the scenario, the environment, the situation. Negative means you're taking something away. Okay, so that's the first half of it. Am I adding something or taking something away? The second half is reinforcement or punishment. So reinforcement means that your actions are trying to increase the likelihood of specific behaviors, and punishment means that you're trying to decrease the likelihood of certain behaviors. So positive reinforcement means I am adding things like treats, praise, access to resources, things like that, to increase the likelihood of a behavior. I like it when you sat. I want you to sit more, so here's a treat for sitting. All right. Positive punishment means I am adding something like an electric shock, pressure, or other methods of usually pain, because something has to be aversive to be punishing, to decrease the likelihood of a behavior. Now, if you work in positive reinforcement, you most likely also use negative punishment as well, which is taking away something to decrease the likelihood of a punishment. An example would be no longer giving your attention or giving praise when your dog jumps up on you, right? So you take away, that's negative, your attention to decrease the likelihood of jumping because it happened. You take it away, that would be the punishment aspect. And if you use positive punishment, you're also using negative reinforcement. So taking something away to reinforce the dog. An example here is you start shocking the dog because they did something that you didn't want them to do, but you stop shocking them when they finally do something that you want. So for example, if you are trying to get your dog to sit and they don't do it, you start shocking until the dog tries to figure out. Hopefully you've done a little bit of luring and a little bit of prompting there to give your dog some sort of an inkling of what the hell you're asking them to do. But as soon as that booty stops, you take away, that's the negative, the shock, to increase the likelihood that they're going to sit again. So that's the reinforcement. So usually when you're working in one quadrant, you're also kind of working in the adjacent quadrant, which might not make a whole lot of sense unless you're picturing like a literal quadrant. So I have done a previous episode breaking down all the reasons positive reinforcement is better, but that was back in 2021, so it may need a little bit of a fresh update and a new perspective. But a lot of this stuff really is still the same. If anything, there's more research coming out that positive reinforcement training is not only more humane, but it may take a little bit longer, but it's more fun and has a lot less fallout. It has a lot less collateral damage. And also refresher training, which is necessary for a lot of things. Even high caliber working dogs do have to go through refresher courses. The dogs that are trained with positive reinforcement methods need less or less frequent. So that's something to consider as well. But what you do need to know is that even though there's only 4 quadrants, trainers fall along a big spectrum of where they align with their training. Some positive reinforcement trainers, which I am a positive reinforcement trainer, believe that there should be 0 positive punishment whatsoever. Now, it may shock you, but I do actually use some positive punishment in my training, but not in the traditional aversive sense. Something as simple as you saying, when your dog does something that you don't want them to do is considered positive punishment, right? I'm adding in the to the environment when my dog does something I don't want them to do. So for example, if I'm working a sit stay and the dog gets up before I release them, I get them right back into the sit stay, don't treat them, but then try my best to reinforce moments when they are keeping their booty down on the ground. So some trainers believe even just is too aversive so these are like your purist, your pure, and And sometimes when I say purist, I think that kind of like paints them in a positive light. And I don't really think that's the case here. Because I do believe that even us, right, us as humans, we learn better when we know when we've made a mistake. And so if it's really good for us to usually tell our dogs, this is what I like for you to do, and to reinforce those, I also think that it's important for us to tell our dogs, oops, that wasn't quite it. Let's try again. So that way they can do a little bit of a process of elimination there as well and try to figure out, oh, it's that thing that I do that, makes me not get my treat, or whatever the case may be. Balanced dog trainers are another thing to consider. And I'm sorry, y'all, but I really fucking hate that term because, again, it paints them in a positive light. But balanced dog trainers use a variety of both positive reinforcements like treats and praise, and also positive punishments like choke chains, prong collars, and e-collars. I think it really depends on this balanced trainer, which one they lean heavier with. Are they leading first with using treats and lures to teach your dog the behavior that they're hoping to accomplish, and then using the aversives whenever your dog has a little bit of an understanding? Or are they just, shocking and pressurizing and chaining these dogs a little bit too heavy? So even in your balanced dog trainer, there you can still fall really heavily into the wrong category. A lot of dog trainers that are getting a lot of attention on Instagram are doing some really harsh things and would still consider themselves balanced, which sounds nice, but it's not. So trainers are very dogmatic when it comes to their style of training. I have to take myself out of lots of Facebook groups because people are just mean to each other, on the internet in general. But when you're talking about styles of training and people are using things that you don't align with, people get nasty and people get ugly online, and it's not a happy place for dog trainers to be on. I'm also very dogmatic, and I firmly do believe in my style of dog training. I'm very against using aversive methods, but I also will use, again, some positive punishment. Like, I don't think that's aversive. For some dogs, it can be, right? And again, we can't think of things in generalities, because for a really nervous, shy, scared dog, if makes them piss themselves, I'm not using that. Okay. There's a lot of other things that I can do instead. So again, this is when we really have to be careful about, we were talking in generalizations here, not in specifics. I also think that I have the right to be dogmatic in my style of training, because it may shock you that I actually first started off my dog training career using positive punishment methods. I used collar pops and collar whips and choke chains and all kinds of stuff when I very first started to learn how to train. And that was my first taste of it. And that was why for a long time, when people asked me if I would ever consider being a dog trainer, I straight up said no. So at the end of my sophomore year in high school, 2009, I had finally come to the terms that vet school just was not in the cards for me, because I am not good at chemistry and I was simply plummeting my GPA, and it was not going to be good enough to get into vet school. And I was really trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do, because for my entire life, that's all I ever wanted to do was be a veterinarian. I was also struggling to find a job. And again, I don't think I said that. This is in the summer, so I was in between my courses, and I actually wasn't taking any summer school this year or that year. And my parents said, if you aren't doing summer school, if you don't find a job, you're going to have to come home. And I really didn't want to do that. I love my family, but I really didn't want to come home yet. So I looked for a job and found an internship that I was able to do, and it was to train hunting dogs for this company that's what they specialize in. So each intern was given a dog from a litter, and the head trainer would show us a variety of different training exercises to perform with our puppies, as well as with other client dogs. So the main trainer was responsible for doing most of the training with the client dogs, but we were supposed to do some of the repetition work, and we had our own puppies that we were kind of responsible for. Y'all, the shit that I did, I am not proud of. I was taught to pinch the tip of my puppy's ear until he screamed, so that way I can put a bumper in his mouth. So for any of you guys who may not know what a bumper is, it's kind of this, it's just like a rubber toy that's like in an oval shape, kind of looks like a big like pill, I guess. And this is used to teach dogs to retrieve. You first teach them how to put it in their mouth, how to walk around with it in their mouth, and they usually float. So then you can use them, toss them in the water. The dogs go out, grab it, bring it back the way that they would, whatever game that you're shooting, like, ducks and stuff. I didn't go very down this rabbit hole, obviously. So, I use the term and stuff when it comes to dog training things still. So there are plenty of easier ways that we could have taught a puppy to put something in their mouth. It's not hard to get a puppy to put something in their mouth. If anything, we're always trying to get puppies not to put things in their mouth. But here I am squeezing my puppy's ear until it screamed so I could stick that in. And then when they were holding on to the toy themselves, the pinch would stop, which also does not make a lot of sense, because if it's hurting your dog still, why would they stop unless they needed to stop to take a breath because they screamed for that long? Yeah, this was standard. This is standard practice. I was also taught how to use the choke chain and to use the end of the leash to booty whip the dogs if they did not be in perfect alignment when I was working a heel. I also shocked dogs for not coming when they were called to me, when they couldn't even... Let me start that one over. I also shock dogs for not coming when called, when they couldn't even call in the first place, because in order to stop the pain of the shock, they wouldn't move. They would pop their booty down and scratch at the collar. So the punishment that I was giving my dog for not coming was actually making them not come even more until they were able to just kind of grin and bear through the pain and then just keep on coming. In which case, when they started to come, the shock would stop. But again, if you're not shocking if your dog's not coming and you start shocking them, sometimes their first instinct isn't to start moving. Their instinct is to, how do I get this thing that's causing me pain off? So these techniques were indeed extreme, maybe because we were training working dogs, but even an experience with my sister who, at the time, also this was like, back in the early 2000s, she had a pet dog, and she hired a trainer, and the trainer used a lot of aversive methods, like throwing a bag full of chains at the dog when the dog did something like counter surfing. So at the time, I just didn't have a lot of confidence in the dog training industry. And, people would ask me like, well, what are you going to do now if you're not going to be a vet? What about being a dog trainer? And again, I was like, I absolutely don't want to be a dog trainer. It's very male dominant. It wasn't a friendly place. The things that I was asked to do and the things that I saw other dog trainers at that time doing just didn't sit well with me at all. And that was my answer until 3 years later, when after I graduated from college, I moved to Houston for a little while, and I started working for a place called Peace, Love, and Dogs, who was mostly a daycare spot, who also was run by a trainer. And, she asked me, hey, would you assist me in my puppy classes? And here I saw a, pretty young, not only was she like physically attractive, pretty, she was young, and she was doing cool dog training, and that really opened up my mind to like, okay, there is a whole nother avenue of training that I didn't really know about. So then, of course, once I got into that and learned even about other dog trainers who were doing things with a positive reinforcement light, that made me feel a bunch better. So the dangers of positive punishment and how much it can be a slippery slope is just one thing that I really want to point out. Let's think for a moment what this does to the trainer from the trainer's perspective. The dog does something the trainer does not like, so the trainer pops the leash as a correction for doing that behavior. This literally does something not only to the dog, causes confusion and scares the shit out of them because I don't know what the fuck I did, but it also does something physical for the trainer as well. There is a reinforcement on a biological and physical standpoint for this trainer. Other examples may become more frequent or more intense. So the more that they do these sorts of punishments, the more that they get a chance to work out the frustration, the more intense and the more frequent those punishments may become. It's also human nature to focus more on the negative things than on the positive things. So with time, there may be, again, more corrections, but even less reinforcement. So again, this quote unquote balanced training is no longer balanced anymore. Pretty soon people are just rage training and just focusing only on those negatives. So this is where I start bringing up a little bit of what I have become aware of recently. That slippery slope became way too slippery for a fellow dog training company in San Antonio. This company has been catching a lot of heat on social media, and rightfully so, because they're using some really harsh training methods. There have been people coming out, multiple people saying that their dogs have died under the care of this company. A lot of dogs have been neglected by coming home. One client that I've heard of said 13 pounds lighter. Y'all, 13 pounds is a lot for a dog. That's a lot. So if your dog is going to a month board and train and they're coming back 13 pounds lighter, that's a lot. If anything, like, people who are using my training techniques, positive reinforcement, are worried that their dog will gain weight, right? And that's not the best thing either, but your dog should not be coming home skin and bones from a training facility. A lot of dogs got extremely sick. Some dogs went missing. So there's just a lot going on. And for some reason, this company is still allowed to operate. And that's what I would like to do today, is just to raise a little bit of awareness for what is going on, because nothing is happening. These people still get a chance to take on new clients. Videos are coming out. Text message threads and phone calls are coming out of them as well. One video shows this so-called dog trainer using the harshest, the most uncalled for the wrongly timed leash corrections on a poor dog, and was completing a board and train to become a diabetic alert dog. According to a Facebook post, Freya died in their care while at this board and train in early 2024. No exact date was given. But her family was still under the impression that Freya was alive, she was well, and she was training all the way through November 2024. The timeline that I was able to put together, and it's not an official timeline, but as February is when we know that Freya, what I think is when Freya passed. So in my opinion, February to November, they were still getting paid and pretending that Freya was alive and well, and all that time she had actually been deceased. This stuff is on Facebook, and you can definitely go and read some of these things. There's a lot more. Freya is just one of 5 of the stories that I read, but one of my sources tells me that there's a lot more. But this company makes their clients sign NDAs. I don't know when the signing of the NDA happens, if it's right when they start working with them, or if it's only if something happens. So there's a lot more people that are afraid to speak up because of this NDA. So Freya is just one of a handful that's mentioned on social media, and you don't have to dig very far to find some of these things, but I will not be linking them, so you can go down a rabbit hole. I'm also again, not usually to throw shade at other companies, because running a small business is very tough, and I would absolutely be devastated if a dog passed away in my care or the care of my team, and our name was just dragged in the mud. However, God forbid if that ever happened to me, it would be a complete accident, not something based off of neglect or choices that me or my team did. Again, awareness of this company and these trainers and other trainers using similar styles needs to be raised. The public needs to really ask questions and demand transparency, not only from their dog trainers, but anyone that you're trusting with your dogs. I cannot believe it is common practice for this company to not communicate with the families for months. The source that I have actually did work with this company and is one of these poor people who dealt with something very traumatic with this company, and it was a 4-week board and train, and they only got videos on the first week. And there was, we're having technical difficulties and all these different things, or videos that were timed or dated the wrong date than when they were actually saying it happened. So at my board and train program, at my company, we expect to see you, the human, every 5 days, because we want you to come in for a private lesson. Ideally, you're taking your dog home on the weekend, so that way you can also be more involved in the training that we do, to keep things up at home, to help that transferring of behaviors from our facility over to your home. But even more on top of that, every single night you get a report card with pictures and videos of your dog and their training style. You get a list of how much should your dog eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner based off of your pet care instructions. Did we administer meds? Did we administer the meds but your dog didn't take it for whatever reason, like they just kept spitting it out and then the pill dissolved? Hardly does that ever happen, but that should be a standard. That shouldn't just be something that happens and something that you should require as a proof of life that your dog is still alive and well in somebody else's home, in someone else's facility, in somebody else's training program. So, that was probably the biggest reason why I wanted to get on this podcast. I do have a couple of other things that I'm not very happy about recently, but raising awareness for that one is definitely important to me. So go look it up on Facebook. Another recent experience I had with another training company who I'm not going to name drop, because I've respected them for a long time and I don't want to burn a bridge. So I won't name drop them, but a recent experience had me just baffled and dumbfounded. So as many of you guys may know, I partner up with a few very select rescue organizations. It's select. We don't have any more openings. So if you're with the rescue organization, you're hoping that you can board your dog with us, I'm so sorry, but all of our spots are full, and actually over full. But I offer some spots to select rescue organizations to offer discounted boarding while these dogs wait for a forever home or for a foster. One of the kids who is currently in my care is a super sweet deaf pitty who has been with us for quite a few months. Number one, he's a pit mix. Number two, he's deaf. He's got a lot of things going against him. And when he first came to us, he was a bit unruly, Any dog with a disability, especially one that is deaf, I find that they lack a little bit more impulse control because they're, messing with one sense less. It's a little bit harder they get overstimulated a little bit easier, and it's hard to communicate with them to calm down. This dog also still needed to learn some bite inhibition. And if you guys follow us on social media, he's the one that hits me with a toy, and I made a very funny video out of it. So after some time, he went to a foster home, and the foster home didn't offer a lot of structure. I think I failed in that department in giving them the right information on how to operate with a deaf dog. And he got himself into a little bit of a situation, a little bit of a pickle. And he ended up having a tiff with the other dog that was in the home, or one of the other dogs that was in the home. And in the midst of stuff, the foster dad got bit. And so, of course, they wanted to bring him back to us. He went back to the rescue for a little while until we had another spot open. He came back to us. And the fosters still wanted to work with him a little bit, hoping that he can get a little bit more training. He actually didn't have any training with us before we sent him. Most of the time, the dogs that are boarding with us in the rescue, they're simply just boarding with us. But when we found out about, the incident that happened, they brought him back, and us and the rescue organization decided to invest a little bit more in training this dog. But before they worked with me, there is another company in San Antonio that specializes in aggression and also has some trainers that specialize in deaf dogs. So the rescue organization lined up a evaluation for these trainers to go out and to eval them in I believe it was the foster's house that they evaled him. And the trainers never actually physically touched the dog, never got very close to the dog, evaluated the dog from afar through a fence, and simply went off of a picture of the bite. Now, in dog training and when you're working with aggression, there are bite scales that we look at to determine the severity of the dog bite. There's 2 of them. One of them being put together by Dr. Sophia Yin, and they deemed this bite to be very heavy on the scale. I did my own evaluation of it, and mind you, as far as I know, as far as I'm pretty sure, this evaluation was based off of a picture, not actually looking at the dog bite. And dog bites get uglier and they look worse with time. In my opinion, they scored this bite a little bit too heavy on the dog bite scale. And even the fosters were like, yeah, it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't hurt. I didn't seek medical. No, did he seek medical care? I can't remember now. It's been a couple of weeks. But they didn't think it was that big of a deal. So because of this picture and because this dog's body language looked rigid from far away, this company deemed this dog appropriate for behavioral euthanasia. And that did not sit well with me at all, because I know this dog. I worked with this dog. He was a lot to handle. But with the right medication, he did need medication. He needed a little bit more than just some CBD. And people to have patience with him and to work with him and think about him on an individual basis is what he needs. Not for him to be judged by a picture and from 20, 30 feet away. I'm approximating 20 to 30 feet. I don't know how close this trainer actually got. I know from what I heard from the other people that were there is that it was not close at all. There was never an exchange of leash. There was never a, hey guy, nice to meet you. There was never actual physical touching of this dog. And the reason why is because this dog is quote unquote a liability. Yeah, man, I get it. If a dog bites, the probability that they're going to bite, sure, is there. But any dog can bite. So any dog is a liability. And that doesn't mean that we should just put any dog down. And this was even more worrisome because, again, in these Facebook groups that I look into sometimes, many people said that they got the same prognosis from that company about their dogs, even though they weren't deaf. They were aggressive cases and things like that. And this is a company that is supposed to be specializing in aggressive dogs. And this really upsets me because someone does the research, they find a positive reinforcement dog trainer who specializes in aggression, and that's pretty rare. I would say most dog trainers who consider themselves aggressive specialists are probably going to be balanced, or they're going to be, positive punishment trainers. So when these people get that prognosis of, yeah, you should put your dog down, either dogs lost their lives or owners lost their trust in positive reinforcement trainers, then took their dogs to positive punishment trainers, and made matters worse because the wrong thing to do with an aggressive dog is to add even more stress and turmoil and adversity to that dog situation. Yeah, that was just a lot. That was really a lot for me to unpack. When I heard that, I was speechless. I went into full-on investigative. I did a lot of investigating and spoke to a lot of people, the fosters, the rescue that was there with them. And so this dog's now been with us again for more months. He's been doing a board and train with us, learning how to do things like sit, stay, and have impulse control, how to find some ways to relax, how to let go of something when he loves to hold on to toys, just hold on to it, right? How to come when called. And that mixed with his meds, he is a great dog who I believe is ready to go to a new home, needs still structure and needs a home that is going to obtain this sort of structure with him and keep up his training. But I do believe that he can have a very long, happy life. And thank God people didn't listen to other people, when they said he should be put down. So my last example of just things that have just been weighing heavy on my heart lately is something that was kind of more my fault. So I hired a guy and employed someone for a very short amount of time. When he first came to me, he told me he had his own dog training business. I knew right off the bat that we did not agree on training methods. He is I don't even think he ever used the word balanced. He may have, I can't remember. But we had a very long conversation about how none of those techniques were ever going to be allowed in my facility. And I wasn't considering him to be a trainer. I was considering him to be a daycare tech. And that was something that he had plenty of experience with in a couple of different facilities for a long time, almost as much experience as I do in daycare. And that environment is not one that you'll ever need to use such training techniques. So I hired him, and he used a lot in his interview. He used a lot of language of dominance, which I told him I do not align with. But I also wanted to ask him, what techniques do you use, right? Because if he's like, I alpha roll the dogs, if he had described averse methods, I would have said there's the door. But he used not aversive methods, but just stupid methods. So stupid. And it took everything in me not to laugh at him. So you can be a dummy, and that's totally fine. I can work with someone who's a dummy. But if you're just going to be malicious, that's something different and not something that I was willing to work with. So first, what is dominance theory? Where did it come from? There was an animal behaviorist who studied captive wolves in a zoo in Switzerland and concluded that these wolves in a pack would fight to gain dominance, with the winner being coined the alpha wolf. Later, this research was debunked by another behaviorist, because this second behaviorist actually studied wild wolves in Canada. The first one were captive wolves. So these were not natural families. They were wolves that had been rescued from other scenarios, brought to captivity. They were not natural families that you would see in the wild, because there's, family choosings, and, certain dogs leave the pack at certain times and go create another pack and different things like that. So the second behaviorist found that the wolf packs that were more natural are more like cooperative families, with leadership often based on mating and producing offspring, not necessarily dominance hierarchies. So the dominance theory is bullshit, and it's time to put it to rest. And if you still believe in the dominance theory and you're a dog trainer, you are uneducated. That is simple. If you're not a dog trainer and you believe in dominance theory, it's because you're watching too much Cesar Millan. And you guys may know how I feel about that guy. So this dude that I hired believed that no dog should ever sleep at the threshold of a door, which I think is silly. And if they are there sleeping at the threshold of the door and you need to go through the door, you shouldn't step around them. You shouldn't step over them. You should literally move them with your feet to get them up and to get the move. Because sleeping at a threshold is your dog trying to be dominant of you. I wish you can hear the sarcasticy. Oh man, this is when my brain gets stupid. It's right at the end of the day. Sarcasm. I wish you can hear the sarcasm in my silence, and I hope that you pick up on that. I think this is so stupid, and this is something that I heard from a lot of trainers, again, 10 years ago, when I was still just getting my start and realizing dog training was not for me. And I just don't get it, because most dogs don't know the significance of a door. Doors are a man-made concept. And besides the front door that you go out for on a walk, or the back door that you take your dog out to potty, doors don't mean anything to dogs. So if your dog's sleeping in front of a door, I don't know, maybe it just felt most comfortable there. Maybe that's where the sun's hitting it. Maybe if the door's closed, they enjoy the little draft of air that's underneath the door. It's not because they're trying to be dominant of you. And if anything, this technique is stupid, because if you kick or disturb a sleeping dog, that is a good way to get yourself bit. Not a good way to keep yourself safe. That's a good way to get yourself bit. So kudos to the dog trainers who are giving people stupid techniques that are dangerous. love that for us. The second thing that he mentioned when I asked again what his training techniques were, is he believed that you shouldn't eat before, or he believed that you need to eat before your dog. He believed that your dog should not eat before you. Now, unlike the last technique, at least this one makes a little bit more sense to me, because in these quote unquote alpha hierarchies, the alpha dog would get access to the kill first. The dog would eat, the wolf would eat, and then whenever he had his fill, he would step away, and then you see go down the hierarchy, the lesser dogs go and eat until you get to the last dog in the pecking order. The last wolf in the pecking order. And again, this is stupid, number one, because if that is even true, these dogs are captive dogs. And number two, these dogs were sharing the same meal. Not, here's your own bowl of dog food, and here's my own food of cereal. So again, this one makes a little bit more sense in the door because, okay, food is something that dogs do value, unlike doors. But again, still really stupid because we're not sharing the same resource here. And if anything, in my family, in my house, I have to feed my dogs first, because if I don't, they're not satiated, they're hungry. And that's when I get, hey mom, can I have a little bit of a snack? And so in my house, if I don't feed my dogs first, I don't have that much of a peaceful dinner. And it's not that my dogs are begging. It's mostly Sully, who's just chilling in the background. He's lost a little bit of his impulse control in his old age, and I wonder if he even notices that he's making noise because he's a deaf kiddo now. But anyway, so yeah, eating before your dog is stupid. Now, the dominance theory, again, should be thrown in the trash for many different reasons. But the biggest thing is, while our dogs do share, genetics, DNA with wolves, they have such a different social structure. And for that reason alone is why people should continue to question it, or start to question it, and really just throw that theory in the trash where it belongs. But the worst part about this guy wasn't that he had out-of-date training methods. It was his perception that he had of these dogs. And I often find that people who practice harsher methods, again, on the spectrum, they're either the positive punishment, or if they are balanced, they sit a little heavier on the side of positive punishment, is that these people don't like dogs or they think very little of them. The ultimate reason why I let him go is because he just thought the worst in dogs and would say things about the dogs when they were just being silly. This dog's jumping up out of excitement, and that's something that we're not supposed to reinforce and ignore. But he just had the worst attitude, the worst thoughts, the worst perception of these dogs, because they were just pains in the ass for him. And again, when you are operating on a positive punishment scale and you're doing something to that brain chemistry of yours, and you're teaching yourself to only focus on the negatives and not focus on the positives. And that mentality, that way of thinking, was not something that I allowed on my team. He ran a decent group. He did. I mean, it wasn't a bad group. It wasn't a great group. He wasn't any better than someone that I hire with no experience whatsoever. But once I heard how he talked about the dogs and how little faith he had in them, the more that he saw the worst in the cute little daycare dogs that are just here to have fun and you're just doing little silly goose things. I said, you gotta go, guy. So why am I ranting and just telling you stupid stories that, as I say them out loud, I think that they're not dumb, but I don't know how you're gonna feel about it. Why am I telling you this? Because picking a dog trainer, any person that you're going to trust with your dog, is a lot. When you're hiring a dog trainer, it's not just a dog trainer. You're trusting that person to teach you how to communicate with and live with your dog. And that is a big responsibility. It is a big responsibility that I take very seriously, and that many people, anybody in this industry, in this position should. It's like picking a therapist. If you don't jive well with your therapist, you're not going to enjoy your therapy session. You might get some really bunk therapy, mental help, and that's not good for anyone. Certification should matter, but it's not the only thing that matters, because again, remember, I was training dogs, trying to get my 300 hours before I was a certified dog trainer. You find ways to learn more about the person that you're choosing to be your dog trainer or your behaviorist or whatever professional that you're looking for. That's one of the biggest reasons why I have this podcast, so people who may be looking for a dog trainer maybe stumble upon one of these episodes and hears me, gets to know me a little bit, gets to know my ideals, my personality, before trusting me with the big task of becoming their dog guru, right? Because that's essentially what I'm trying to be for you, is teaching you how to be the best dog parent that you can be. Ask for a meet and greet, ask for initial consultations. I'm not going to lie, I don't do initial consultations for free, because most of the time I'm going to start training or giving you advice right there in the beginning. And I believe that you should put a little bit of skin in the game, and prove that you're going to put in the work in the dog training process, because I'm training you, and you are the biggest piece to this puzzle when it comes to your dog's learning. But do initial consultations or meet and greets, read websites in really good detail, even though my website's a little out of date, because I'm the one that does it. Someone put it together, but I'm the one responsible for keeping it up to date, and I got all things going on. So my website might not be the best, but go and read the website. You'll get to know a lot about the company and their mission statements and anything like that. All of that's super important. Look at Google reviews, but even those are weird. Read the Google reviews. Don't just look at the stars. Ask questions in local Facebook groups, because y'all, that's where I went down these rabbit holes when people are speaking and just giving, hey, go here, don't go here. Those things are super important. Ask other pet care professionals, ask your vet, ask your groomer what a good dog trainer is, or the opposite. A lot of people ask me about groomers, and I'm always going to be referring the ones that I know are going to take their time with dogs and not just, manhandle the dog to get it over and done with. So ask for recommendations from your other trusted pet professionals. Either way, though, if you're in the process, if you've already given money to that person because you thought it was, this was the good way to go, if at any point you start to get a gut feeling that this is not what you signed up for, this is not what you are comfortable with, it's not the techniques that you're aligned with, that's not how you want to be treating your dog, ask more questions as to why am I doing this technique? And that person should really be able to tell you the psychology behind it, the learning theory behind it. And if it still doesn't sit with you, stop. Get your dog out of there and go away, because what you don't want to happen is for things to progress and for your dog to not come home.
Now, that might be the end of the episode, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Follow us on social media. I'd love to connect with you. We have quite a few social media platforms. For nutrition and holistic pet care tips, follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Steph the Pro Dog Mom. You can find fun training tips on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Pup Pup and Away SA. If you're in San Antonio and you want to bring your dog to us for boarding, training, socialization, and nutrition, come find us. But if you're not in San Antonio, we do training and nutrition sessions virtually. Yes, they can be just as effective, I promise. Please rate, review, and subscribe to my podcast on whatever platform you listen on. And please, please, please share with a friend. The positive reinforcement of knowing people actually listen to this and find it valuable helps motivate me to keep on recording. We'll see you guys at the next episode.